I decided to come on and just do a few videos from the start of my multiple sclerosis diagnosis and through to today. There's been quite a few people who I guess have followed my journey since diagnosis, and so I thought I might do a series of videos that will start from the diagnosis, and then I can go through some of the things that I tried, and I can tell you what worked for me and what didn't work for me. And that way, look, if it helps someone along the way, that's great. If not, well, I've given you my story and you can move on. So that's the reason I'm doing this video, really just to share the knowledge with people. Even the beginning of the diagnosis, I think, is important because, you know, I was diagnosed so many years ago. It was back in 1997 and I was 31 years old at the time, and I'm actually 59 now. So I've had the diagnosis for quite some time. But the events that happened then, I certainly hope aren't happening today, and I guess that's why I want to share the story. So at the time, I was working for a government department, and I was in a managerial role, which was quite stressful. I was in a bad relationship. I had a bad relationship with food and alcohol. So I certainly drank most weekends socially and to excess, and I didn't eat well. So, you know, I guess you could easily say that the combination of all those things is how I ended up where I am today. So it all started with I was sitting up in the middle of the night doing some reports, and it was probably 3 o'clock in the morning. And I think I just didn't have a lot of sleep, and I was obviously quite stressed about what I needed to get done. And I woke up the next morning with double vision. So that was obviously quite strange. So I took myself off to the doctor, and the doctor said, you have a middle ear infection. So here's some antibiotics, off you go. So I did that, had to wear an eye patch because I obviously couldn't see straight. So I did that for a week and then thought, this is ridiculous. Like, how can I even have an ear infection without knowing? So I've gone back. He's said, oh, okay, well, no, I think it's from stress. I think because you're in a stressful job, you're in a bad relationship, and I think this is just all some stress. So you need to take time off work and you need to just rest. And I was like, this is a really bad time for me to have time off work, and I really don't think that I'm stressed, but okay, I'll have the time off work. So that was another week off work. I've then gone another week and gone back in to see him again. And he's like, no, you just have to understand that you're really stressed and you need more time off. So again, I had another week off. So we're up to 3 weeks now, and nothing changed. So I went back the 4th time, and I just kept saying, look, I really don't understand. I think it's something more. I had Bell's palsy, I think the year before. And for any of you that don't know, Bell's palsy is the condition where it can cause half of the face to sort of drop. Some people are left like that permanently. Some people, it comes back. Mine didn't last too long. So anyway, I just wondered if it could have been a neurological thing stemming from that. And I did ask the doctor, but he was like, no, it's got nothing to do with that. So he decided to send me off to see an ophthalmologist because of my eyesight. So off I went to the ophthalmologist, and he did the eye tests, and he said, no, look, the condition that you've got does not occur in people of your age. It really is only young kids that we see with this condition. And so he was sort of scratching his head. So then I told him the Bell's palsy story, and he said, oh, well, I've got no problem referring you to a neurologist, so I'll do that. In the meantime, my friends had pointed out that I had started to drag a foot, which I had not even noticed. So I went off to see the neurologist, and he asked me about my symptoms, and you could see that he appeared to understand quite quickly what was going on. So he gave me a referral, told me to go to the hospital, and said, I want you to wait there for your results, and then I want you to come straight back. So I did that. I went down there. I was a little bit concerned and confused, I went on my own and I had the MRI, and then I was asked to wait in this tiny little room for my results. And then in the meantime, a doctor came in and started asking me strange questions. You know, did I have pain in my face? Did I get pain sort of around the jaw and the teeth? And I was like, yeah, but, you know, I put that down to sinus. And so, you know, they were scrambling around a little bit, gave me my results, and then I went back to see the neurologist. So the neurologist takes a look at the results and says to me, well, you've got multiple sclerosis and you also have a tumour. And I'm looking at him stunned, and he is saying, oh, let's not worry about the tumour, let's talk about the MS. And I'm still stunned because my brain is stuck on the tumour. He's trying to tell me about MS, that really at that point in time in 1997, there wasn't a lot known about MS. And the way he delivered it to me was, if you have a boyfriend, he will leave you. And what I would suggest to you is that you go out, you party, you have heaps of fun, because in 2 years' time, you're going to be in a wheelchair. So that was my lovely delivery of the diagnosis. And for anyone who does go off to see someone and thinks that they don't know what they have, I would suggest that you take someone with you. I mean, when I think back now, I think it's quite awful that I was delivered a diagnosis like that with having no support and no one around me, because I've basically gone from, you know, thinking no one knows what's going on to getting a diagnosis right on the same day. And it really is quite a frightening experience when someone delivers the information to you like that. Obviously, he had a terrible bedside manner, and what he said was really disgusting. In regard to the tumour, he did send me off. He actually spoke to a surgeon, showed them my MRI, and it turned out that I had funny bone structure. So retrospectively, he was correct in that the tumour was not something to worry about, but I just wish he had not delivered it to me at that point in time, because my brain was too focused on having a tumour and really didn't listen to anything about the MS. Not that he really told me a lot, other than I'd be in a wheelchair in 2 years and everyone's going to leave me and I just need to go out and have fun until that point. So anyway, he ended up prescribing me some steroids, and I was diagnosed with the relapsing remitting type of multiple sclerosis. So grateful for that. And the steroids worked and cleared everything up, and I went back to work. I wasn't there very long, and bang, I had another relapse. And this went on for 6 months. And every time I relapsed, I went back to see the neurologist. I got more steroids. So by the time I'd had 10 relapses in 6 months, he said, well, now you qualify for the medication. And he said, there is only one medication on the market, and it's beta-interferon. And what you need to do is inject yourself every second day. And what that will do is basically just reduce the number of relapses that you're going to have. So it's certainly not a cure, but it will reduce the number of relapses you have. So hopefully you'll have less disability within time. So I started doing that. And then I also went back to work again, and it continued. And I remember the last time I relapsed was, I was managing an office at that point, and it was my decision in regard to the delivery of an application. Sorry, I'm trying to not say where I worked because I don't think it's relevant. But anyway, so a member of the public came in. I had to deny their application due to a conviction that they had against them. And so I denied their application, and the fellow decided to try and swing a punch at me, and thankfully I was far enough back that I was able to step back and miss the punch. But that was enough to stress me out again and flared me up again. So off I was back at the neurologist. This time, he was not happy at all. And he just said, look, I don't care that you love your job. I don't care you want to go back. He said, I'm actually putting you off on sick leave until further notice. So that was the end of that. I was on sick leave, and I just continued to relapse, continued to stay on steroids, continued to inject every second day. Nothing was really working. I was with a partner at the time, the same person I was in a bad relationship with when this all started, because I guess I was frightened that, as the doctor had pointed out, he was going to leave me. I was going to be on my own, and I think I panicked about thinking how I was going to manage all of this on my own at 31 years old. So anyway, I did suggest to my partner at the time that I wanted to move somewhere that was more quiet. So we decided to move to Mackay. He got a job there in the same organisation that I was working for, because I was still actually employed, but I was on sick leave. And the manager that was in Mackay at the time was happy to employ me once I felt better. So we moved up there, and things kind of went from bad to worse. It wasn't that long that I had actually been taking the injections, and also not that long from the diagnosis, I guess. Maybe we're talking 7 or 8 months in. We go up to Mackay every morning and every day. I'm in pain. I'm fatigued. I can barely get off the couch. He's off to work every day, and I'm just sitting there doing nothing. He pretty much drank every day until he fell over, and I continued to drink as well. So my lifestyle certainly didn't change. I just continued to drink and eat rubbish and sit there and wallow in my own self-pity. So that continued for quite some time. And then I do remember one day taking the car and going for a drive, and I really just wanted to end my life, and I pointed it to a brick wall, and thankfully someone was looking after me, and I turned away before I did that. To be fair, I've got to be grateful to my partner at the time. I think he obviously discovered something was wrong with me, and he could see that, so he made an appointment at the doctor's and took me to the doctor, and I was prescribed some medication for depression. It was a very strong medication. So when I started taking that, I was sick also even sicker than I normally was. In the morning for the first couple of hours, I always felt like I was going to throw up. But the benefit in that was that 6 months later, after taking the medication, it was interesting that I had stopped taking the medication without even realizing. And obviously the medication had done its job, because I sat down and I decided to plan. And I remember having a list in front of me going, well, where do you want to be? What do you want to do? And then what needs to stay and what needs to go for you to achieve that? And so what needed to go was my partner, because there was no relationship there. He'd just become an alcoholic, and it was best that we just weren't together anyway. And I realized I needed to be close to my family, and I also needed to lose weight, because all of that drinking and unhealthy eating that I continued, I ballooned out to 100 kilograms. So I wasn't doing myself any favors here. If anything, I was just feeding the fuel and just making matters worse. So thankfully I had that little bit of insight, which I can only be grateful to the medication for that, for the depression, and the planning process, and however that popped into my head, I don't know, but I'm truly, truly grateful. So I left Mackay and I drove down to Brisbane to be close to my family, and I ended up just renting a place with my brother, one of my brothers, and I started to diet. So interestingly enough, once I drove away from Mackay, I already felt so much lighter. I felt like so much pressure had been taken off me. I felt instantly happy, just going back to be near my family. And so once I arrived and got set up, I started dieting. I was in the right headspace, and I dropped 20 kilos quite quickly. And then not long after I arrived in Brisbane, a letter came through, because I'd been on sick leave for 2 years. And to be honest, any communication that I had from my previous job, I don't even remember. I couldn't process anything. Before I even got medicated and through that process, I wasn't aware of really what was going on. I waking up and going to sleep and just trying to survive the rest of the time. So I get back to Brisbane and I'm here for a couple of months, and I get a letter in the post to say, we've actually processed your temporary disability. And I was like, oh my God, I've just lost my job. And I thought, I don't even know how that happened. Like I said, I don't even remember talking to anyone. I probably did, but I was quite out of sorts the whole time, so I don't really even remember the process. So I get this letter. I've been paid out on a disability support pension, TPI from my superannuation, and I'm thinking, wow, I'm unemployed. Now, what do I do? And interestingly enough, that also added to my happiness, which was really odd. I mean, you think I'd be really stressed. I did love the job, but I think maybe getting that finality was about, okay, well, you need to make a decision now as to what you're going to do with your life. So I went, you know what? I'm going back to work. They've only retired me temporarily, so there's no reason why I can't go back to work. And so I felt better. Everything had, losing the weight. I'd stopped eating rubbish. I'd stopped drinking, no longer in a bad relationship, living with a family member. Life was great. And I just started applying for jobs. And I was lucky enough to get another job back into, I was in state government before, and I got a job into federal government. So I was really, really grateful. And so I took the position there, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was in the year 2000 that I started working there, and had a great career. Ended up in management positions again, and my goal in life was always to retire in human resources. And I was so grateful that without a degree and without getting a senior education, I managed to get into human resources and finish my career in human resources, and I was so grateful. I would have loved to have kept working, but in 2015, and I was 49, it was in December, I had my worst relapse ever. And bear in mind, even though I lost the weight prior to that, and had only lost 20 kilos, so I was still 80 kilos, which was overweight for someone my height, which is like 159 centimeters. I continued to eat not extremely badly, not like I was when I was sick, but I kind of had plateaued and didn't sort of look at losing any more. And I also was back on the drink, not that much, but socially I was still drinking alcohol. And I'd moved back into, again, positions that were quite stressful. Even though I loved it, it did come with its pressures. So I was working for the federal government department. I had a relapse, and it was called transverse myelitis. And I actually ended up with a lesion on the back of my neck, which made me go numb from my neck down. The steroids weren't doing the trick. And I, at that time, was living on my own. So I was smart enough to call my brother and say, can I come live with you? Because I can't feel from the neck down. And while I'm still walking, I think it's quite dangerous to be on my own. So he was great. He took me in. And once I got there, I contacted my specialist straight away. And I got the secretary, and she said, yep, no problem. I'll speak to him and get back to you. She didn't get back to me that afternoon. And by that time, like even sitting on a chair, I could easily fall off because I just couldn't feel my butt. I was freezing, which kind of makes me wonder if it's similar to the motor neurons disease, where because I didn't have the feeling or the sensation, I was sitting out in this hot sun with a doona around me and still freezing, and I just couldn't get warm. The walking was getting worse because I started to get really restricted in my chest. So the feeling of numbness was just getting tighter and tighter, and I was really scared that I wasn't going to be able to breathe. So I just felt restrained. And obviously I didn't have the feeling in my hands either. So I again called the next day and got a different lady in the practice who again told me to just hang tight and she'd ring me back. But I explained to her that things were getting so scary that I might just take myself to the doctor. And she said, no, got it under control. Give me 10 minutes and we'll have you sorted. And thankfully she did. She got back to me. They got me a bed in the hospital and I just had to go straight up there. They got me in, which is when they did the scans and they discovered the transverse myelitis. I was in hospital for 3 weeks because they couldn't release me because I lived alone and I wasn't able to look after myself. I remember the specialist coming in to see me every night, and I remember asking him the question and said, so when will I walk again? Because at this point I wasn't able to walk. Once the attack just hit me fully, I wasn't able to get up and walk. So, and he just took one look at me and said, not this time. You're not getting up to walk this time. He'd known me for always having a positive mind. And he said, I love that you've got a positive mindset. I love that you try and tell yourself you don't have multiple sclerosis. But he said, this time, it's not going to happen. You've got transverse myelitis. Where the attack is in the back of your spine, you're just not, I'm sorry, but you're not going to walk again. Anyway, I looked at him and again laughed at him and said, that isn't an option and I'm not going to believe what you're telling me because it's just, my brain won't process that and won't allow that to happen. Anyway, so there I was in hospital and he came in on, I think, the 2nd or 3rd week and I was up with a cane walking. So once the physio came round and I got my exercises, I had given myself a schedule and a plan, and I would get up and I would stand with the bar in the room and I would do my exercises that I needed to do for my legs, and then I would go back to bed, and then in the afternoon I'd get up and do a few more, and I just did this every day religiously just to try and get as much memory back to try and walk. And the physios were great as well, because what I didn't realize was I was actually trying to walk with the cane and the physio just said, throw the cane away, we need to get the walker, you aren't walking properly. And so I had to get taught how to walk from, heel to toe again. Ideally, it would have been, they were trying to get me into rehabilitation in the hospital, but we realised that my private health didn't cover me fully for that, and I wasn't financial enough to pay for that in the private hospital. So they were going to release me and get me to be going to rehabilitation in a public hospital. And that was the theory behind it. But even in the public hospital, they couldn't fit me in for rehabilitation. So in the end, I just had to be released to home, and I just had to be diligent about exercising. Well, when I say exercising, doing my exercises, the physio exercises, to try and get the walking and everything back again. Anyway, so I got released from hospital and I went back to work, and I was a senior executive in the position that I was doing with human resources at the time. And I remember going back and I was in my first meeting with the director, and all these things were being discussed. And I thought to myself, I have no idea what they're talking about. Anyway, I sort of stayed at work for 2 weeks, and I thought, I don't know how long I can get through this because I actually don't even know what they're talking about. So I spoke to my director and said, look, it's time I come clean. I really have no idea what you're talking about. And so she decided to send me off for a neuropsych assessment, which is basically just seeing someone and they give you a series of tests to see how you're performing, what your memory's doing. So it turned out that having the lesion on the back of my neck had actually caused me to lose my memory. So I couldn't do little tasks like sequences. If you told me a story that someone went to the shop and bought something, all I would remember is they went to the shop. I couldn't remember anything further than that. And so I did 4 hours of testing with this neuropsych, and he did his report, sent it back to work. Then they sent me off to see an independent neurologist who also assessed me. And at the end of the day, it was decided that they would retire me on medical grounds because there wasn't much else that they could do. So I was retired in 2015. Like I said, I was 49 years old. And up until that point, my MS journey really, I just followed mainstream. I got my diagnosis. I did everything I was told like a good little girl. I did what the doctors told me, and I had no quality of life, and I just got up every day and just plodded along until the next relapse. So for me, in 2015, when they retired me, that lit a fire in my belly. And so that's, I think, where the story begins from there, of all the things that I tried to make sure that I was going to do the best I could with this diagnosis. And I will end it by saying the gift that I got was that really bad relapse in 2015, the retirement from work, which meant that every time I was sitting down and I couldn't walk, I was researching. So when I started researching, I learned a lot. And even today, I just continue to research. So in my upcoming videos, I will start from what I've tried first, and then I will go through the process and tell you what follows. I probably left a lot out in the middle there, but it's all quite boring. I don't think you needed to know all of my history of what happened. But I think it's an important story to tell, because there are people being diagnosed today and you really don't get a lot of information depending what doctor you go to. And I also recall, you know, at the beginning of the diagnosis, someone suggested, oh, go to an MS meeting. And I went to an MS meeting and all that did was freak me out, because I'm like, is that going to happen to me? You know, and multiple sclerosis, a good friend of mine who also got diagnosed later on in life, she calls it mystery shit. And honestly, that is what it should be called, because while it's the label that we've been given for this disease, not everybody is the same. You know, like I can be affected with my mobility. Someone else loses their vision and can actually walk a long distance. It's different for everybody. So the worst thing I did was going to a meeting, and all that did was throw me back into depression again. So I think, should you get diagnosed with this condition, reach out, talk to people that have had it for a long time. Know that there are people out there living completely healthy lives with the condition. You won't necessarily be in a wheelchair. Don't listen to any doctor, but also know that there is no medication for any condition that will heal you. What that medication will do is it might help things a little. It might take away pain. It might reduce the number of relapses you have. But with everything that you take, there are consequences. There are side effects. And what I did find out years later is all that pain that I was in at the beginning of my diagnosis, where I was in pain every morning and I was fatigued and sitting on the couch, was a result of the side effects of my medication. So should I have not been medicated? Would I have had a life pain-free? I don't know. But let me tell you, I'm on absolutely no medication now, and haven't been for at least the last 5 years. And I'm in absolutely no pain unless it's to do with the way that I'm walking, because I do still have mobility issues and I do push myself to the end of the day, and sometimes it puts my body out of balance. But that's the sort of pain that I have. I don't have the constant aching pain that I used to have, and I don't have the fatigue. And I know with every single type of medication that I tried, and trust me, my specialist tried every single one, my condition was worse, not better. So living a life unmedicated, looking after myself naturally, is the best thing that ever happened to me. So that's why I call MS my gift to better health, and I will continue to do. And I'm loving what it's taught me. I'm loving the track that it's taken me down. And I feel really grateful for that, because if I was not diagnosed with that condition that many years ago, I would have continued on the journey that I was on, eating rubbish, partying hard, and drinking a lot. So I'm probably luckier than a lot in that I got the diagnosis all those years ago and I was able to turn my life around. So I'm truly, truly grateful for that. Well, I hope you got something out of the video. And if not, sorry that you had to sit here and listen to it for that long. All right. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.